At 2 a.m., a house makes noise. A floorboard groans or the walls pop, and we barely stir. We've spent years training ourselves to ignore these sounds, attributing them to the wood expanding or the foundation settling into the dirt. It's a necessary habit for sleep, but it creates a window of time where a deliberate human sound can be camouflaged by the house itself. Take the case of a woman living alone in a single-story home. Like most people, she viewed her bedroom as the ultimate sanctuary, a room where she had complete control over who came in and who stayed out. The first sign was a fine layer of white powder. She found drywall dust sprinkled across her dresser one morning. Naturally, she looked at the ceiling and assumed she had a pest problem, maybe a mouse or termites scratching at the drywall behind the paint. A few nights later, the silent dust was replaced by a sound that didn't fit the profile of a rodent. Lying in bed in the dark, she heard a rhythmic, metallic scraping. It was heavy, intentional, and it was coming from the air conditioning vent directly above her mattress. She didn't turn on the bedroom light. Instead, she grabbed her phone, switched the camera flashlight to its highest setting, and pointed the beam up at the ceiling, trying to see through the narrow slats of the overhead grate. The beam illuminated the dusty metal interior, and then caught on something wet. A single, wide-open human eye reflected back at her. It was perfectly still, unblinking, and staring directly down at her bed. We install ventilation and HVAC systems to make our homes comfortable. We rarely consider that these open, interconnected pathways completely bypass our locks and alarms, giving a predator a direct line of sight into our most private spaces. Observing someone through a vent requires patience, but sustaining a hidden presence inside a home requires logistics. An intruder needs space to sleep, eat, and remain undetected for days at a time. The dead space of an attic provides exactly that. In the UK, thousands of people live in terraced townhouses, rows of connected properties sharing a single continuous roofline. This architectural quirk offers a unique logistical advantage to an unwanted guest. The tenants of one particular townhouse started waking up at 3 a.m. to the sound of heavy pacing overhead. Because their house was attached to the neighbors, they applied normal social logic. The guy next door must be dealing with insomnia and walking the length of his upstairs hallway. That logic fell apart the following week. The neighbors packed their car and left for a 10-day holiday. The house next door was entirely empty. Yet at 3 in the morning, the heavy, rhythmic footsteps above the ceiling started up again, and this time they sounded louder. The next afternoon, the homeowner brought a ladder into the upstairs hallway. He pushed open the square attic hatch and lifted himself up, leaving the safety of the lit house for the pitch-black, dusty void above. He didn't find animals. Spread out across the fiberglass insulation directly above the master bathroom was a makeshift nest, blankets, food wrappers, and water bottles, positioned precisely where whoever lived up there could listen to the tenant showering below. To understand how someone got in, he shined his flashlight toward the dividing line between his unit and the neighbors. The heavy brick firewall separating the two attics had been dismantled. Someone had knocked completely through the masonry. The intruder had broken into the empty house next door months prior. Instead of staying there, they were commuting through the roof cavity, crawling through the hole in the firewall to sleep above the occupied unit where it was warm. As the homeowner stared at the broken brick, the darkness inside the neighbor's attic shifted. He heard the sudden thud of knees hitting the wooden joists, followed by the frantic sound of dragging as someone crawled rapidly toward the hatch. We assume that a locked front door makes a house a self-contained fortress. If you share a roofline and your attic space is unmonitored, the idea of a separate home is a complete architectural myth. Knowing someone is living above your ceiling is terrifying. The true danger begins when they decide the attic is no longer enough, and they cross the threshold into your living space. A man living in an isolated, older house had been dealing with strange occurrences for weeks. The home featured a large, unfinished attic, accessible only by a heavy wooden pull-down ladder located in the main hallway. He began waking up to a kitchen he didn't recognize. Every cabinet door would be standing wide open, every silverware drawer pulled out to its limit. He knew he hadn't done it. It meant that while he was asleep, Someone was lowering that heavy wooden ladder and spending the night walking through his home. Terrified but determined to regain control, he went to a hardware store. He installed a heavy-duty steel latch and a thick padlock directly onto the outside of the attic hatch. His plan was simple: keep the hatch shut and trap the intruder up there until the police arrived. He locked the hatch that evening and went to sleep. Around 2 a.m., he was violently jolted awake. A loud, aggressive scratching echoed through the house, the sound of someone desperately clawing at solid wood. He lay frozen, listening intently to the source of the noise. The scratching wasn't coming from the ceiling. It wasn't someone trying to claw their way out of the attic. The sound was coming from the hallway floor, directly outside his bedroom door. He crept out of bed, got down on his hands and knees, and looked through the gap under the door. Standing perfectly still, inches from his face, were 2 completely bare, filthy feet. The padlock had worked exactly as designed, but his timing was wrong. When he locked the hatch earlier that evening, the intruder was already down in the house. He hadn't locked them in, he had locked them out, trapping a desperate person inside the living quarters with him. An attic serves as the perfect staging ground. It's a dark, unmonitored blind spot that gives a predator total control over the environment. Once they breach the main living area, the home stops being a sanctuary and immediately becomes a cage. If you hear a heavy thud or a prolonged scrape coming from your ceiling tonight, don't assume the house is just settling. Investigate it immediately. Because if you wait, you are simply giving whoever is up there the power to choose exactly when they come down.